Hello and welcome to our Parent 11 Plus Verbal Reasoning webinar. In this webinar, I'm going to be looking at the different 11 Plus exam boards used by different schools. I'm going to look at the different types of questions in a verbal reasoning exam. I'm also going to talk to you about some of the resources you could use with your child to help them prepare at home. I'll also be discussing my 11 Plus Verbal Reasoning programme and how I can help your child prepare for the exam too. So here's a little bit about me and my background. I am a qualified teacher. I've worked in local classrooms as a classroom teacher, but also as an intervention teacher, identifying gaps in children's learning and then creating programmes and delivering those programmes to help plug those gaps in children's progress. In 2015, I started on my own as a private tutor, and in 2020, we developed a team and we changed into a limited company. So we're a small team of passionate qualified teachers providing one-to-one tuition and group programmes too. In January last year of 2023, I published my first book, the Busy Bee Times Tables book, and in September last year, I also launched the 11 Plus Verbal Reasoning programme for Year 5 pupils at first. I'm actually opening that programme up this year to Year 4 and Year 5 pupils as well. I'm also working on a series of maths books and launching a new brand this year with a particular focus on Year 6 pupils developing a good foundation of maths for high school. So let's first of all look at the different exam boards used by different grammar schools for the 11 Plus exam. There are four main exam bodies used in the 11 Plus entrance exam. They are the GL exam board, the CEM exam board, the ISEB exam board, and the Cat4 test. Schools sometimes use their own exam as well, but it's usually influenced by one or two of those above exam bodies. On the right of this screen, you'll see 4 QR codes, and that will take you to each exam bodies. Usually they share some practice papers or some practice materials to show you how their exams are laid out. Every school tests in a slightly different way. They may test at a different time of year, and they may use a different suite of exams. They may also want to interview your child as well. The important thing to do is seek out their website or ring their admissions team and find out the exams that your child will sit. Make sure you register your child for those exams too. There may be an English exam, a maths or numerical reasoning exam, a verbal reasoning exam, or a non-verbal reasoning exam. We're going to focus on the verbal reasoning element of that exam today. The English element of the exam, depending on the exam board and school, may have an element of comprehension, spelling, punctuation and grammar. Some schools will also test using a short write paper as well. Maths is usually a core exam within the 11 Plus. It relies on a sound knowledge of times tables and the ability to quickly recall those facts and also apply those facts to a variety of questions. It does require a confident approach to all calculation methods, known as arithmetic, and the ability to solve a variety of word problems too. A baseline to aim for in maths is to cover all the topics within the Year 6 curriculum, but this is a baseline. The 11 Plus usually requires a little bit more than what is in the national curriculum at Year 6. It includes basic algebra, ratio, pie charts and basic nth term. While we can't guarantee what will be on each paper each year, it's good for your child to have confidence in all of these areas so that they can enter the exam confidently and perform well. Verbal reasoning is an unusual subject. It's a subject that is taught in preparatory schools but isn't taught in a mainstream primary school. So if your child is thinking of transitioning through the 11 Plus from a mainstream school to a grammar school, it is something they're going to need to spend a little bit of time on to make sure they have the skills and feel really familiar with the paper. It requires a good knowledge of sophisticated vocabulary. It requires a good knowledge of the alphabet, the order, and also being able to work backwards and forwards with the alphabet too. It requires a good understanding of number facts and operations like adding, timesing, dividing, squaring, and so on. It requires the ability to pick out information, to analyse that information and to carry on sequences, the ability to jot information and analyse patterns, to use and identify identify codes, and to reason logically in puzzles and problems. Non-verbal reasoning is a different subject to verbal reasoning. It's not something that's taught in primary schools, but it is taught in some preparatory schools. Non-verbal reasoning includes a good knowledge of 2D and 3D shapes and the ability to visualise shapes and patterns too. It requires good spatial awareness, being able to recognise symmetry, to be able to differentiate patterns and sequences, to be able to recognise similarities and differences between patterns, to understand the positions of clockwise and anti-clockwise, and it also requires a child to reason and draw conclusions from the patterns they see. I'm not going to focus on non-verbal reasoning today, however I do support children on a one-to-one basis with it, so if your child is entering a non-verbal reasoning exam and would like some support with this preparation, please get in touch. So let's focus on verbal reasoning and the types of questions your child might face in the exam. Verbal reasoning is varied. It covers a wide variety of questions. There may be anagrams. Your child may need to use alphabetical order to solve a question. Your child might need to categorise words and find words that match too. There's code breaking. There's hidden words in sentences. There's identifying rules and applying those rules. There's logic problems. Numerical reasoning using their math skills, completing sentences in an appropriate way, sequencing words or numbers. There may also be some vocabulary association and word puzzles too. In the next few slides, I'm going to share with you just a small selection of questions from a GL exam paper. This is a categorisation example. In these questions, 3 of the 5 words are related in some way. Find the 2 words that do not go with these 3 and mark them both on the answer sheet. That sounds quite complicated, but we teach this as the odd ones out. So we're looking at the words that were given: clear, conclude, finish, terminate and prevent, and looking for 2 words that don't match the other 3 in that sentence. In this one, conclude, finish and terminate are all related. It all means that something's coming to an end. So the odd ones out in this sentence are clear and prevent. This is an example of using codes. 3 of these 4 words are given in code. The codes are not written in the same order as the words and 1 code is missing. So the child are given the words nail, find, late and fist, all 4-letter words. And then they're given 3 number codes: 3752, 5674 and 4689. Those 3 codes only match 3 of those words, but which words do they match? So children need to look for patterns. They need to look for common letters that are coming out time and time again. For example, the I comes out in 3 of those words. So at least 2 of those codes will have that number in them. So the I is in the 3rd place of nail, in the 2nd place of find, and the 2nd place of fist. So through a process of deduction, we look at the most popular letters and try and work out what those letters are. For speed, I did this one earlier. Find the word that has the number code 4963. The answer is leaf. And the reason that's the answer is we deciphered that number 4 was the L, and then we took it from there. So LATE must be 4689. It is a process of deduction. It does take some jottings, and it is one of those questions that takes a little bit of time. So in the programme, we teach children on questions like this to leave them till the end, because it does require a little bit more time. And what they don't want to do is spend too much time on questions like this and miss out other questions in the paper. This type of question is what we refer to as a word puzzle. In these questions, the 3 words in the second group should go together in the same way as the 3 in the first group. Find the word that is missing in the second group and mark it on the answer sheet. So we look at the first set of brackets first. We've got search and lotion, and when those letters are muddled together, we end up with the word near. So the way I teach children to look at this is to number each of the letters. So near was made up with the 12th letter, the 2nd letter, the 3rd letter and the 4th letter. So when we come to camera and strong, we'll use the 12th letter, the 2nd letter, the 3rd letter and the 4th letter. and the answer is game. In the GL types of exams, you're given multiple choice, and some people mistake this for being easier. However, if you look at some of the answers, there are similarities there, which means a child can easily answer the wrong answer by rushing the question. There's two of them that begin with a G. The answer is game, which is C. But if you look at gate, it also starts GA and ends in E2. So whilst multiple choice can be quicker to answer, it does take some skills in slowing ourselves down, taking things carefully and steadily, and double checking our answers. Let's look at some useful resources you can use with your child at home to prepare. The mistake I see many parents making in preparation for the verbal reasoning exam is going out, buying all the practice papers and diving straight in. What tends to happen with this approach is paper after paper, the scores tend to stay very similar. The child then sees that they're not making progress and they become very demotivated and frustrated. If we take a skills first approach, we're actually recognising the child has no experience of verbal reasoning in a mainstream school at all. So therefore we're going to explore all the different question types, the skills, knowledge, and build their confidence before practising that new knowledge in an exam. There are lots of workbooks on the market, and there are websites as well where you can help your child practice these skills. There's workbooks by CGP, Bond, Collins, Letts, Schofield and Sim, and many more. I prefer working with CGP with my pupils. The reason for this is, yes, the questions are pitched lower than in the exam, but it helps them explore the question types and is a really approachable way to build their confidence, build their knowledge and their techniques towards more challenging questions as we approach the papers. Some teachers prefer using Bond. It is a very personal choice. The main thing is understanding how to unpick the questions and being able to help your child take a step-by-step approach to each of them. Having a good knowledge of spellings is really important in verbal reasoning. I have developed a free handout with over 80 pairs of words, and they're called homophones. Homophones are words that sound exactly the same but are spelt differently, and that's because they're used in different contexts. For example, the weather, it's raining outside, or the king reigns over England. If you use the QR code on screen, that will get you your automatic free download. Once your child has developed confidence with all the skills, it's time to apply those to a practice paper. Seek out some exam papers that match the exam board your child is going to sit. If you look on the exam board website, there's usually a selection of free materials. Some of the exam boards also produce extra materials that you can purchase as well. There are a selection on screen. If you're unsure, seek out the school website. There's usually a link that will take you to the right place. To summarise, here's my 3 top tips. Don't dive into test practice too quickly. Focus on skill development first, and when you do get to do practice papers, complete all the questions first before introducing a timer. If your child is in a mainstream primary school and thinking of sitting the 11+ verbal reasoning exam, it is a brand new subject to them. They won't have covered any of the skills before, and that's why my 11+ verbal reasoning programme is a really useful tool for them to have 14 weeks of intense tuition to cover all the skills and question types they need. This verbal reasoning programme is specifically for pupils sitting the GL exam. The 14-week 11+ verbal reasoning programme is a structured programme. It's specifically designed for the GL exam and focuses on all the question types in that exam. Each week is a structured programme in which we build on the skills from the lesson before. We work at the pace of the children within that group, and it's live and interactive. Children are able to ask questions so that we can slow down the learning or speed up the learning depending on how they grasp the subjects. All the modules have actually been pre-recorded, so your child can re-watch any of the particular skills they find difficult for revision purposes, and you have access to all those recordings all the way up to the exam. We also cover exam techniques, and we also give out homework to practice in between the sessions, so your child is developing knowledge and practicing those skills so they're consolidating their learning. The next 11 plus verbal reasoning programme starts on the 24th of January. It's a Wednesday at 6:15 and it will be at that time every week. I will send out a schedule of all the dates of the lessons for the 14 weeks because there's a 1 week break at Easter. If you'd like to register your child for a place on that programme, registration closes at midnight on the 20th of January. And the reason for that is to give me some time to send out the workbooks and logins to all the children that are attending. The groups are kept at a maximum size of 10. If we have 11 children that sign up, they will be split into 2 smaller groups, a group of 6 and a group of 5. I keep the groups really nice and small so that everybody can have that personal touch and I can feed back to children as we're working, little bits of help and so on. The 14-week programme is specifically designed for Year 4 and 5 pupils who are sitting the GL exam. And the reason for that is we focus specifically on GM questions and the techniques that are associated with that. One-to-one tuition with me is £35. And so this is a really, really good value way of looking at all the skills for verbal reasoning programme. And then if you want to focus on maths and English at home, you can. Or if you want to take up one-to-one tuition, you can just focus that time specifically on English and maths. And this is really why I developed this programme. So £175, it makes weekly tuition a really affordable proposition. The other thing I ask that all children registering for the programme do is buy the workbook, the CGP workbook, which it does show on the sales page at £8.25. And that's because each week we learn the topics together, we practice the topics together, and then they're directed to specific pages in the workbook to practice at home. If you want to know more information about the programme, use the QR code or get in touch with me. My telephone number is 07806 615 997, or you can email me, Mrs Adams at primary-tuition.co.uk with any questions you've got. Book in for a chat and we can talk about whether this programme is the right thing for your child. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate this webinar has been a whistle-stop tour of verbal reasoning and the 11 plus exams, but I hope you have found it useful. If your child is joining me next week for the verbal reasoning, I'm very excited and can't wait to get started. But if you have any questions, please just get in touch and we can talk about whether the programme is right for your child.